Here are the headlines for Wednesday morning, August 14, 2024. Harris campaign busted spoofing news outlets and headline-altering ad scheme. The presidential campaign of Kamala Harris created fake headlines next to the names of real news outlets, such as The Guardian, CNN, and NPR, in an effort to trick people into thinking they stumbled upon authentic articles. According to Axios, these ads included links to genuine articles, but with altered headlines and supporting text. News outlets affected by this tactic expressed their disapproval and emphasized that they had not given permission for their brands to be used in such a manner. Google's Ad Transparency Center revealed that the Trump campaign is not running similar types of ads, which are labeled as sponsored and distinguishable from search results. The Harris campaign claimed that these ads were intended to provide voters with more context about Vice President Harris, but other platforms, like Facebook, have taken action against such deceptive practices in the past. European Union disavows attention-seeking politician Thierry Breton over electoral interference letter threatening Musk. A conversation between Donald Trump and Elon Musk generated a reported 1 billion views, prompting the left to collectively freak out. The Washington Post asked the White House if there was anything they could do to stop the conversation from taking place, while the European Union's Thierry Breton threatened X with punishment if they didn't crack down on content that promotes hatred, disorder, incitement to violence, or certain instances of disinformation. However, Brussels later accused Breton of going rogue and not seeking approval from European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen before sending the letter. Musk responded to the threat with a meme, and Trump campaign officials called for the European Union to mind its own business instead of meddling in the United States presidential election. Britain is proof. Globalists plan to use migrants as a mercenary army against the West. The author believes that the United Kingdom is experiencing a form of ethnic warfare perpetrated by alien migrants from Africa and the Middle East, who have brought their cultural familiarity with violence to the country. The British people may not be equipped to deal with this type of calculated violence, which could lead to apathy and browbeating. The situation in the UK is seen as a precursor to what may happen in the United States, where the issue of illegal immigration will become central to politics in the next couple of years, regardless of who wins the November election. United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America files charges against Trump. Musk first strikes comments during X conversation. The United Auto Workers Union filed federal labor charges against former President Donald Trump and Elon Musk for making comments that allegedly threatened and intimidated workers who engage in protected concerted activity, such as strikes. The comments were made during a conversation on the X platform where Trump referenced the gutting of Twitter staff after Musk took over the company. Musk was accused of laughing at Trump's comment, which implied that workers who go on strike would be fired. The union stated that it is illegal to threaten or fire workers for going on strike and accused Trump and Musk of trying to silence working-class people. 61-year-old Brit gets 18-month prison sentence for chanting "Who the fuck is Allah?" A 61-year-old man in the United Kingdom was jailed for 18 months for chanting "Who the fuck is Allah?" and telling police officers you're not English anymore during a protest outside Downing Street. David Spring attended a demonstration of around 700 people in London on July 31st, which turned disorderly. While Spring's behavior could be described as offensive and unruly, his sentence exemplifies how the United Kingdom has slipped into extreme authoritarianism. The man's wife, who suffers from ill health, will now be deprived of her primary carer thanks to Spring's imprisonment. Who is running America? The New York Times discloses Lloyd Austin ordered major deployment to conflict zone. The New York Times revealed that Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin ordered a submarine to the Middle East in an unusual disclosure, raising questions about civilian authority and oversight in the executive branch. Journalist Glenn Greenwald wondered if President Biden was involved in the decision, while comedian Dave Smith said it's clear that Biden is not capable of running the country due to his senility. The situation has led some to speculate that Vice President Kamala Harris or unelected White House staffers are actually in charge. Meanwhile, the United States is deeply involved in two major wars, and critics argue that the military intelligence complex is making decisions without accountability, similar to what happens in third world countries. Colbert's own audience laughs at him, seriously stating cable news network is objective. Stephen Colbert's audience erupted into laughter when he seriously claimed that the cable news network was objective and just reports the news as it is. The comment was made during an interview with Caitlin Collins, a CNN correspondent who has been accused of anti-Trump bias. Collins had previously suggested that President Trump was struggling to attack Kamala Harris due to her being a non-white woman. Colbert's audience found his statement about CNN's objectivity to be hilarious and ridiculous. Tesla's 1950s-style drive and supercharger in Hollywood takes shape. Tesla is building a unique destination for its owners at the Hollywood Diner and Supercharger project in West Hollywood, featuring a 2-story restaurant with seating for over 200 diners and a separate theater area that accommodates up to 77 guests. The complex will also include dozens of charging bays and 2 towering 45-foot LED screens located in the parking lot, allowing guests and Tesla owners to watch movies while their vehicles charge. Construction began about 1 year ago, and Tesla has recently published its first job opening for the diner, indicating that the project is nearing completion and could potentially be rolled out across major metropolitan areas, enhancing the charging experience for drivers and creating a new revenue stream for the company. Putin appoints ex-bodyguard and aide to oversee defense of Kursk as Zelensky boasts of 74 towns captured. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that his military has seized control of 74 communities in Russia's Kursk Oblast, spanning hundreds of kilometers, 1 week into the surprise offensive. The Kremlin has reported lower numbers and contrasting accounts of the situation, with Russian forces claiming to have repelled the invasion. Zelensky stated that Ukraine is not interested in taking territory, but aims to protect its people from Russian strikes, which often originate from across the border. Over 100,000 citizens have been evacuated from southern oblasts along the border, and at least 12 Russian civilians have been killed, with another 121 injured, including 10 children. President Putin has reportedly appointed a special official, Alexei Dyumin, to oversee efforts to restore order in Kursk and the border regions. Experiment gets a grade F-. Nantucket residents fume over broken wind turbine blade polluting beaches. A wind turbine project off the coast of Nantucket failed when one of its blades broke, scattering fiberglass shards onto the pristine beaches. The federal government halted construction and electricity generation at the Vineyard Wind Project after the malfunction. Despite this failure, Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey expressed support for transitioning away from fossil fuels and expanding offshore wind energy production. However, local residents are opposed to the project, citing concerns about its reliability and potential harm to the environment. The incident highlights the challenges of implementing renewable energy sources, particularly in areas where they may be unreliable or have unintended consequences. 4 ways to inoculate your children against Marxism. In 2007, President George W. Bush dedicated a memorial in Washington, D.C. to the 100 million people murdered by communism over the past century. To prevent young people from falling prey to this ideology, parents, grandparents, and mentors can inoculate them with literary works such as George Orwell's Animal Farm in 1984, Ayn Rand's We the Living, and Alexander Solzhenitsyn's A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. First-hand accounts from people who grew up in former communist countries or escaped from countries like China or Cuba can also provide a powerful witness. Additionally, discussing daily news with teenagers and critiquing it, as well as making them aware of far-left groups that follow Marxist precedents, can help prevent infection from this ideology. The Federal Reserve does not own gold. The Federal Reserve does not own gold, having handed over its gold stockpile to the Department of the Treasury in 1934 in exchange for gold certificates. The value of these certificates is based on the statutory price of gold, which has been constant at $42.222 per fine troy ounce since 1973. Although the Federal Reserve does not own gold, it acts as the custodian of gold owned by account holders, such as the United States government, foreign governments, and other central banks. The Federal Reserve's gold certificates have no connection to the actual market price of gold, making changes in the price of gold irrelevant to the Fed's portfolio. One step away from the biggest oil shock in history. The Strait of Hormuz is the world's single most important energy corridor, connecting the Persian Gulf to the rest of the world. More than 40% of global oil exports transit this narrow waterway daily, totaling around 21 million barrels worth over $1.5 billion every day. Iran can shut down the strait at will due to its commanding geography and expertise in unconventional warfare, which has been referred to as its geopolitical trump card. If someone were to disrupt the strait, it would cause immediate global economic chaos as energy prices skyrocket. A potential war between the United States and Iran could see oil prices rise above $300 a barrel due to a massive supply shock. Core consumer prices hit new record high up for 50th straight month. Following last month's deflationary print of negative 0.1% month over month, the United States Consumer Price Index rose 0.2% month over month in July, meeting analysts' expectation. The year-over-year inflation rate decreased to 2.9% from 3%, marking its lowest level since March 2021. Hunter Biden asked State Department to aid Burisma deal while father was vice president. Hunter Biden sought assistance from the United States government in securing a deal for Ukrainian gas company Burisma while his father Joe Biden was serving as vice president. The New York Times reported that Hunter, who had no experience in the industry, was a highly compensated board member of Burisma and attempted to obtain State Department help in facilitating a dialogue between the president of Tuscany and Burisma leaders for a geothermal energy project. Government records show that federal officials were anxious about Hunter's request, with one Commerce Department official writing that they should be careful not to promise too much. The White House stated that then Vice President Biden had no knowledge of his son's inquiries. Pushing back against viewpoint-based discrimination by banks. Tennessee lawmakers have adopted legislation aimed at curbing viewpoint-based discrimination in financial services, also known as debanking. The law prohibits large banks from canceling customer accounts based on constitutionally protected speech and religious exercise. This comes after incidents involving Zulfat Suara, a Muslim woman and Nashville City Council member, and Steve Happ, a Christian man who began a ministry in Uganda, both of whom were canceled by large national banks with little warning or explanation. The legislation is seen as a first-of-its-kind consumer protection bill that will apply to banks with at least $100 billion in assets, such as Regions Bank and Bank of America. Generic brand Mucinex found to contain cancer-causing benzene. A report by Bloomberg has revealed that the cancer-causing chemical benzene is present in generic store brand versions of Mucinex cold medicine sold by major United States retailers such as CVS, Walmart, Target, and Walgreens. The brand name version made by Reckitt Benckiser does not contain benzene. Despite international warnings, United States regulators have allowed the use of benzene in drugs for decades. Recent tests have found high levels of benzene in some products, prompting concern and sparking plans to phase out its use by 2026. The Democratic National Committee is coming to Chicago, the nation's homicide capital, 13 years running. Chicago's recent decline in homicides will be touted by the city's leadership as an achievement of its commitment to equity and social justice, but this drop must be taken within the context of the massive surge in murders Chicago experienced post-George Floyd. Despite a 12% decline in homicides in 2022, another 13% drop in 2023, and a further 10% reduction so far in 2024, Chicago is still on track to exceed its 2019 murder level. The city's soft-on-crime policies continue to encourage more crime, with banned police foot and car chases emboldening criminals to go on robbery sprees, an increased felony theft threshold incentivizing shoplifting and other crimes, and the elimination of cash bail, resulting in a drop in the number of offenders held behind Cook County bars. What's behind Belarus' military buildup along the Ukrainian border? Belarus recently shot down Ukrainian drones containing North Atlantic Treaty Organization electronics over its airspace and is now strengthening defenses along its southern border, also considering shutting down the Ukrainian embassy in Minsk. This development follows a previous border crisis between Belarus and Ukraine, as well as Ukraine's recent sneak attack against Russia's Kursk region. Ukraine might be probing for weaknesses along the Union States border, with some speculating that it could attempt to replicate its successful breakthrough into Russian territory elsewhere. The United States may not support such an escalation, especially if it risks provoking a North Atlantic Treaty Organization Russian hot war, and may instead try to dissuade Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky from pursuing this path, possibly by driving a wedge between him and his hawkish chief of staff, and Yermak. Rate of cancer deaths projected to increase by 93% in men in 2050. Men tend to develop cancer at higher rates than women, and this disparity is expected to worsen by 2050, according to a study published in the American Cancer Society's journal, Cancer. By 2050, the number of new cancer deaths for men globally is projected to reach 10.5 million, a 93% increase from 2022, while the number of new cancer cases for men is expected to rise by 84%. Lifestyle choices such as smoking and alcohol consumption are cited as main factors contributing to the widening gap between sexes, with 32.6% of men worldwide smoking in 2020 compared to 6.5% of women. Matteo Salvini: will opposing illegal immigration be declared a thought crime too? Italy's Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini has criticized the United Kingdom's government for its crackdown on free speech following recent riots in the country. Salvini accused Prime Minister Keir Starmer of persecuting citizens who express opinions online, including those who oppose illegal immigration and defend family values. He warned that blocking illegal immigration, defending families, and fighting Islamic fanaticism could become thought crimes punishable by law. The Italian politician's comments came as dozens of people in the United Kingdom were arrested for social media posts related to the riots, with some facing prison sentences for comments deemed threatening or inciting violence. Improper Social Security payments reach $1.1 billion. Agency backlog hits all-time high. The Social Security Administration is experiencing a record-breaking backlog of payment actions, resulting in improper payments totaling $1.1 billion to beneficiaries as of February. The agency's Office of Inspector General reported that the pending actions at claims processing centers have reached an all-time high of 5.2 million, causing larger improper payments and increased financial burdens on recipients due to underpayments or overpayments or overpayment. Dollar dumped to 4-month lows. Bitcoin and big caps pumped ahead of consumer price index tsunami. The producer prices data released today showed a cooler than expected headline in core PPI, which was seen as dovish for monetary policy hopefuls, while also revealing margin compression that could be bearish for corporate profitability and stocks. However, the weak dollar trend that emerged overnight dominated the market, with the dollar index tanking to its lowest level in 4 months and breaking below its 200-day moving average. This led to a buy all the things day, with bonds, stocks, and cryptocurrency prices rising, although oil prices dipped and gold remained flat at record highs. Will Trump end elections? Anatomy of a failed hoax. A recent hoax claimed that Donald Trump wanted to cancel elections, but this was based on a misleading clip of his speech at the Believers Conference in Nashville. The full video shows Trump explaining that Christians tend not to vote in as high numbers as other interest groups, and he encouraged them to vote just this time. However, many news outlets ran with the misleading clip, causing damage to Trump's reputation. It wasn't until Laura Ingraham aired an interview with Trump on Fox News that the truth was revealed, but even then, some news articles refused to accept his explanation and tried to keep the hoax alive. German military base locked down after suspected sabotage to water supply. A German military base in Cologne 1 was placed under lockdown after suspected sabotage targeted its water supply. The base, home to 4,300 soldiers and 1,200 civilian employees, is a critical hub supporting war efforts in Ukraine and houses aircraft used by Chancellor Olaf Scholz and his minister. Officials believe someone contaminated the water and found damage to a perimeter fence, with reason to suspect an illegal entry. Military police are investigating all alleged crimes. SpaceX plans first human spaceflight to explore Earth from polar orbit. SpaceX is moving forward with its spaceflight plans, announcing that the first human spaceflight mission to explore Earth from a polar orbit will launch later this year aboard a Falcon 9 rocket. The Fran 2 mission will be commanded by entrepreneur Chun Wang of Malta and include crew members from Norway, Australia, and Germany on their first space flights. During the 3 to 5 day mission, the crew will study unusual light emissions resembling auroras and capture the first ever X-ray image of a human in space to research how spaceflight affects the human body. Is Mean Girls a winning script for Kamala? The 2024 presidential campaign is being transformed into an election for prom queen, courtesy of Kamala Harris's strategy to win by being cool rather than competent. The Democrats are embracing her skin-deep nature, highlighting her energy and appearance, and building her campaign on a foundation of social memes and ridicule. To bring Harris down, the Trump team should undermine the Democrats standing by ridiculing their nominee's shallow strategy, remind voters why they didn't take Harris seriously as recently as June, force her onto a stage where she can be questioned about her policies, and contrast Trump's toughness with Harris' fluff, assuring America that he has the common sense to manage real problems. Geopolitical tensions are transforming the rare earth market. China's long-standing dominance in the rare earth market is gradually declining as other countries increase production, driven by Western governments' efforts to reduce reliance on China and mitigate supply chain risks. Despite recent price volatility and oversupply, demand for rare earths remains strong due to their essential role in high-tech and green technologies. The global rare earth market has tripled over the last decade, with Australia and the United States ramping up production, backed by government support. However, China still controls a significant share of the midstream to downstream processing and manufacturing stages, making it difficult for other countries to shake its grip on the industry. To loosen China's control, Western governments will need to provide continued financial backing to develop domestic rare earth value chain. Why corporate America's retreat from social activism is good for everyone. The doctrine of social responsibility, which emphasizes corporate do-goodism, risks extending politics into private lives beyond its proper scope. Economist Milton Friedman warned that this approach can lead to collectivist ends without collectivist means, undermining the rights of property owners. Theodore Levitt echoed this concern in his 1958 article, The Dangers of Social Responsibility, arguing that corporations should focus on profit motive rather than social activism. The blurring of lines between private and public life has led to a culture saturated with politics and political messaging. However, some companies are retreating from corporate social activism, which may help restore the proper balance between business and society. Japan's Prime Minister Kishida announces resignation amid scandals, opening door to political chaos. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida announced his decision to step down as leader of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party in September, effectively ending his tenure as Prime Minister. This move comes after months of speculation over his ability to survive scandal and rising living costs. Kishida's 3-year premiership was marked by low approval ratings, largely due to a political funding scandal that forced him to sack 4 cabinet ministers in 2023. The country's economy has also faced challenges, including high inflation and the need for rate hikes. Kishida's departure opens the way for multiple candidates to compete for the position, with speculation centering on former Trade Minister Toshimitsu Motegi, former Defense Minister Shigeru Ishiba, and former Foreign Minister Taro Kono as potential successors. General Motors cutting jobs amidst larger structural overhaul in China. General Motors is scaling back its operations in China due to intense competition and overcapacity in the world's largest car market. The company will meet with its local partner SAIC to explore a larger structural overhaul of its business overseas, which may include reducing factory capacity and further job cuts. Despite these changes, General Motors will still produce affordable vehicles and electric vehicles locally in partnership with SAIC Motor and Wuling Motors, with some models being exported from China. The company aims to restore profitability before its 30-year contract with state-owned SAIC expires in 2027. Stealth, quantitative easing, or rubbish from Dr. Doom? The Treasury Department's recent debt issuance patterns have been scrutinized for potential manipulation of the bond market. However, experts argue that the Treasury is simply responding to market signals and its low-cost funding objective by adjusting its issuance patterns, rather than attempting to boost the financial market and economy to help the Democrats win the election. The department has been issuing more short-term debt, which is in high demand, rather than manipulating the market with stealth quantitative easing. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen denies any such strategy, stating that the department is merely doing what it said it would do. Taiwan to launch live-fire exercises off East Coast using United States-supplied missiles. Taiwan is set to conduct military drills along its east coast later this month and in early September, involving air-to-air firing exercises with American advanced missile system. The drills will test the precision of Taiwan's main combat aircraft, including indigenous defense fighters, French Mirage 2000 fighters, and upgraded F-16V jets. China has been conducting threatening military drills near Taiwan and in the Taiwan Strait over the last several months, prompting Taiwan to strengthen its military readiness. Consumer Price Index Preview, market pre-traded a low-print equity risk is to the downside. The Federal Reserve's mouthpiece Nick Timiraos published 2 articles in 24 hours previewing a September rate cut, signaling that the writing was on the wall for a guaranteed rate cut in September. This led to speculation that the Consumer Price Index number would come in line or just below estimates, and it did, with headline CPI declining 0.1% month over month, the most since June 2020. The United States seeks Iran de-escalation with Turkey's help. The United States is urging its allies that maintain relations with Iran to persuade them not to escalate tensions in the Middle East further. The U.S. Ambassador to Turkey, Jeff Flake, made this request, specifically mentioning Turkey as an ally that should prevail on Iran to de-escalate. Recent Israeli assassinations of Iranian officials have heightened concerns about a direct conflict between Israel and Iran, leading to increased anxiety over a potential retaliatory attack from Iran. As a result, crude oil prices have jumped, with Brent crude returning to above $80 per barrel on Monday amidst the rising tensions in the region. United States sending Saudi Arabia $750 million in bombs, reversing 3-year ban. The Biden administration is set to lift its 3-year ban on sales of offensive weaponry to Saudi Arabia, with shipments of bombs worth over $750 million expected to be delivered in the coming months. The move is part of efforts to woo Riyadh and secure a Saudi-Israel normalization deal, as well as support for a Gaza ceasefire. The United States will deliver 3,000 small-diameter bombs and 7,500 Paveway IV bombs, which have been on hold since President Biden halted the shipments in 2021 over Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen. Futures flat in cautious trade ahead of Consumer Price Index as gold nears record high. Investors are eagerly awaiting the July Consumer Price Index print expected at 8:30 New York time. The July United States Consumer Price Index data is forecasted to be soft, driven by housing rents, user car prices, and discounts in discretionary services. The bond market remains long heading into the data, as traders look for an aggressive pricing of Federal Reserve easing to be maintained. Federal Reserve dated overnight index swaps are pricing in around 107 basis points of rate cuts for the year, with roughly 37 basis points of easing priced into the September policy decision. You are an assistant that modifies titles by replacing upside with its full form. However, I couldn't find any acronym or abbreviation for upside. If you meant something else, please provide more context or clarify the modification rule. Assuming there's no change to be made, upside force. UBS highlights 3 supportive bids, the retail BTD. United States equity futures trade tentatively in DXY below 102.5 ahead of United States CPI, Kiwi underperforms post-RBNZ. Newsquawk offers real-time financial news in various formats, including free pre-market movers reports, market open podcasts available on Apple and Spotify, and a 7-day trial for its premium audio news Squawk box.